Better stay with me than Bob Dole. I mean, after all, they'd get to play Nintendo in the Situation Room. Leon promises to let me know whenever Barney comes on. But this babysitter debate raises only one of many pertinent questions the voters have to ask themselves before they choose the next president. An interesting line. I mean, for example, let's say you were going on vacation for a couple of weeks. Who do you trust to water your plants? Bob Dole or Bill Clinton? And suppose you were too busy shaking hands tonight and you didn't get to eat. And you go home tonight and you decide to order a pizza. Who do you trust to select the toppings? Bob Dole or Bill Clinton? Or what about this scenario? Bob Dole is on a train headed toward Spring Valley at 65 miles an hour. Bill Clinton is traveling by car from the opposite direction at 35 miles an hour. Given the fact that the train has twice as far to travel as the car, who do you trust to arrive in Spring Valley first? Bob Dole or Bill Clinton? Now, if you don't think these questions are relevant, and they may not seem relevant, I ask you, who are we to question the wisdom of Senator Dole's focus groups? Let me say this, too. This is a serious comment. I think Senator Dole made a mistake not keeping Mary Madeline on his team. And Mary, I saw you up here earlier. Wherever you are there, you're welcome on my team, and I don't care who you're married to. Any bald-headed Cajun knows we're right and they're wrong. As you know, this is the very first time in our nation's history a sitting president is facing a sitting majority leader in the fall campaign. To be fair to all concerned, it's a difficult situation. Just imagine trying to do the job you were hired to do with an adversary breathing down your neck, questioning your every move, waiting for your next misstep. Trent Lott ought to just cut it out. Now, many of you have been writing about my so-called stealth campaign for re-election. We hit our first major setback this week when the RNC broke the code on our press releases. But I want you to know I'm holding firm to my strategy, and my strategy is working. In fact, according to the New York Times, my vice president is closer to formally announcing his candidacy than I am. By the way, I want to congratulate the Times on that Al Gore wants to be president scoop. Pulitzer's in the bag. Some of you, some of you have been asking for 6 months now, well, when is this announcement speech? In keeping with the stealth campaign strategy, Mike McCurry had this idea that instead of the traditional announcement speech, tonight I should just give an off-the-record announcement on what he calls psych background. As if we didn't have enough trouble. So that way I could give you some insight into my truly secret, private thoughts about this election. So if we can all agree on the ground rules, I'd like to give you a sense of the musings of my inner candidate. You can attribute these remarks to a source inside the president's suit. Now, I had a occasion to give this topic considerable thought last weekend as I was going through the Sunday classified ads. Gosh, there must have been 8.5 million listings, all of them at good wages. But I couldn't find a single job I'd prefer to this one. So, in lieu of a formal announcement speech, you can report on psych background that Bill Clinton is under the strong impression that America is a great country and that we are living in an age of possibility. Bill Clinton suspects that America is moving in the right direction, but we have to keep working together to find common ground. Bill Clinton is inclined to think he can help us meet America's challenges with just one more term. Now, I'd like to go back on the record to say thank you and good night, so you may report that Bill Clinton said thank you and good night.
Well, Al, that should give you something to compete with. Tonight's entertainment marks the first for this dinner, the first time that an entertainer with such a big success here, we've invited him back for an encore. I have to admit, when I first asked Al Franken to join us tonight, I was not aware that I was inviting a celebrity, but that was before the publication of his best-selling book. In fact, one reason I think Al was so eager to come here was he figured at the least he could sell a few extra copies. I also didn't realize I'd picked another controversial dinner speaker. But a few days after the word got around that Al was coming, I got a call from the White House correspondent of a major U.S. newspaper. Did I realize, he asked me, that Al Franken was well known to be not only a Democrat, but even a liberal? I replied I had been concerned about that, but when I went to a party in honor of his book, the first friend of his I ran into there was none other than Arianna Huffington. I figured that if Al was okay for the conservative Miss Huffington, the White House Correspondents' Dinner could probably survive. Before he became a successful author, our guest was best known as one of the original writers of Saturday Night Live. He's a winner of 5 Emmy Awards and recognized as one of the nation's sharpest political wits. And he's managed to do all of this despite the twin handicaps of going to Harvard and attending Renaissance Weekend. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to present Al Franken.
Thank you very much. I was sitting on the dais and a Secret Serviceman walked up with this note from the Hay Adams. It says, "Al, don't be nervous. There's nobody important here. Dick Cavett." So, Dick Cavett's here, so someone, let me get this thing out of here. Anyway, it's a tremendous honor to be short. By the way, I thought the president was very funny. Didn't you? I mean, you're no Dick Lugar, but... Now, the last time I was in this room, actually, this is an honor to be asked back again, but the last time I was in this room actually was a little over a month ago for the Radio and TV Correspondents' Dinner. And actually, during the evening, I came up with the title to my next book. Don Imus is a Big Putz. Okay, quick. My impression of Don Imus at the 1944 Radio Correspondents' Dinner. Don Imus at the 1944 radio correspondence dinner. For those of you listening on radio, the president is a cripple. You know, I guess what Imus was trying to do was sort of demonstrate his shock jock bona fides by showing that he was willing to walk, speak in front of 3,000 people and offend, pretty much everyone. That is not my goal tonight. Let me let you in on my goal. If at the end of this evening, the Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, walks out of this hotel thinking, that Al Franken is a pretty funny guy, then I know I will have failed miserably. And let a lot of people down. If, on the other hand, the president leaves thinking, Al would make a pretty good consul general to Bermuda. Mission accomplished. But the Correspondents Association was afraid of a repeat of the whole Imus debacle, so the Board of Governors had a meeting and drew up some ground rules for tonight's talk. For example, there are a number of subjects I've been instructed to avoid. Whitewater, specifically Webb Hubble, Susan Thomas's, either of the McDougalls. I am not to do jokes about any aspect of the president's personal life except his eating habits. Evidently, sir, you eat a lot. And the Correspondents Association seems to think that we could have quite a bit of harmless fun with that. Other subjects to avoid: Newt Gingrich's first wife, Bob Dole's first wife, Phil Graham's first wife, Dick Armey's first wife, Rush Limbaugh's first wife. Well, Rush Limbaugh's second wife, Rush Limbaugh's third wife. Now, here's a real odd one, and it's really kind of, I don't know. I can do jokes about abortion, but only first trimester abortions. Isn't that odd? Okay, now this one's almost insulting. I must remain fully clothed. For example, I cannot moon the First Lady. Carl, what do you think I am, a shock jock? So, Carl, you can rest assured that I'm not going to do any jokes tonight that could make the president or the First Lady even remotely uncomfortable. And if you believe that, I've got some land in Arkansas I'd like to sell you. But I can sympathize somewhat with Imus, because when you do a speech like this, it's really, you have to risk offending someone. When I did this dinner 2 years ago, I did a joke that actually is still quite timely. The joke was this: having Al D'Amato lead an ethics investigation is a little like having Bob Dornan head up a mental health task force. Not a bad joke. So this is a true story. 3 days later, I was in Hollywood. I was in someone's office, and this person's assistant walks in and says, "Al, Congressman Bob Dornan is on the phone for you." I said, okay. "Oh, Congressman, Al, I heard you did me in at the White House Correspondents' Dinner." So, well, Congressman, I told a joke. "Well, what was the joke?" "Okay, the joke was having Al D'Amato lead an ethics investigation is a little like having Bob Dornan head up a mental health task force." And there was a pause, and then, hell, that's okay." So now I like Bob Dornan, He's a crazy homophobe, but he can take a joke. And that's Now, speaking of Al D'Amato, I'm pretty well known for my Al D'Amato impression. You want to hear it?
We are simply attempting to ascertain the veracity of the First Lady vis-a-vis and in regard to the discrepancies and inconsistencies, which I am told mean the same thing. Insofar as they relate to the documentation contained in the documents and the information therein vis-a-vis and in regard to, does anyone remember how I started this sentence?
Thank you, Al D'Amato. No. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. This year actually has been a very exciting one for me because for a while this winter I was actually a member of the press corps. I briefly covered the campaign for Newsweek. I remember one night in Manchester, New Hampshire, I attended a Dole event. It was a VFW spaghetti dinner, and it was a very special night for Senator Dole because there were actually a few people there who were older than him. And it turned out to be a real morale booster. So the next day I went to the Milford Rotary Club to see Steve Forbes, who's here tonight out there. By the way, Mr. Forbes, my book did so well that I'm now for the flat tax. No, I really believe having my royalties taxed at 17 instead of 39.6% will unleash my creative energies. Anyway, it was this cold day in Milford, and there were about 100 of us out there in the press corps, freezing, locked out of the Rotary Club, because according to the Forbes press guy, we had scared the Rotarians. So we're standing out there for 2 hours, and this Dutch crew decides to interview me. This is how little was happening. So this Dutch correspondent says to me, "Which of the Republicans do you like the most?" And I said, "Well, I guess of the Republicans, I like Bob Dole the most." He said, "Oh, but he is so old." I said, "Well, you know, he wasn't too old to save your sorry Dutch ass." I said, now, how long exactly did it take the Nazis to roll over Holland? Was that like an hour? Now, by this point in the campaign, Phil Gramm had dropped out, which, to be honest, I had sort of seen coming. The first time I saw him speak on the stump, he said, "I flunked the 3rd, 7th, and 9th grades." Gee, what a surprise. Now, I followed Buchanan around for a few days in South Carolina, and I had met Buchanan in '88 at the Atlanta Convention. When I came back to New York, I told my friends in New York, you know, Pat Buchanan is charming. He's a very charming guy. And more than one of my friends said, "Oh, yeah, well, Goebbels was charming," which is just so unfair, because Goebbels wasn't charming. No, Goebbels was an ill-tempered backbiter. Anyway, my Newsweek assignment was to get an interview with Buchanan, which I didn't get, but I came up with some questions, and I don't want to waste them, so here they are. Mr. Buchanan, you have said that 1 million immigrant Englishmen would assimilate to life in America better than 1 million Zulus. Who do you think would do better, 1 million Zulus or 1 million Pygmies? You have said that said that Holocaust survivors had, quote, group fantasies of martyrdom and heroics. Is the same true of your followers? Have you ever had a homoerotic dream? Get some water. Now, Lamar Alexander is here tonight over there, and I think we all remember. I think we all remember Lamar's ABCs, Alexander beats Clinton, or as I like to call it, a bad campaign. Of course, we all know the Alexander campaign would have gone nowhere without the support of Bill Bennett. Now, I haven't actually read the Book of Virtues, but I have seen Bennett on TV quite a bit, and evidently smugness is one of the basic virtues. And no one knows that now better than Bob Dole. I don't need to tell you in the media that things are not going well for him. Dole is now behind the president in every demographic group except one. Apparently, he still enjoys a slight lead among agribusiness executives. For now, the Dole campaign is kind of dead in the water.